Welcome back to College Football Addiction. We finally made it to game week 1, FSU Bama. My buddy Drew on with us, Tighter Insider 977 ESPN there in, is it Huntsville, right?
Yep, that's right.
Drew, it feels like the longest offseason ever, but we finally made it to game week. Bama's a big favorite in this, right? 13.5 points on the road, though. Is the mood just uber confident around Alabama? Is it leery because of last year at all? Obviously, Bama's been so good in openers forever, but new regime going into year 2. Like, how confident is Bama right now?
I think they're pretty confident. I think they like the offseason that they've had. It's been relatively quiet. It's not been without its bumps, TJ, because they've had some injuries, as you know. Jam Miller in the final scrimmage, it was a very physical one. Near the end of the scrimmage, he popped his collarbone out of place, had to have it reset and pop back in, and so he'll be out probably until late September against Georgia. So he will not play against Florida State. That's certainly a blow. And then Jaden Roberts, the returning right guard, who spent most of last year injured, is still having concussion issues. So he could very easily miss this game, which would open the door for Geno Vandermark, who has spent the majority of, if not all, of camp with the first group. Geno is a transfer from Michigan State who played quite a bit last year. He's versatile. He can play both the guard spots and center, but certainly they're very confident in him. From what I understand in the scrimmages, he's performed very well, and so they're very confident in his ability. He and Chris Capella go back a long way to Michigan State, and he recruited him there, and they're very familiar with one another and what they want from each party. And so I don't think there'll be a lot of slippage there. The running back situation will be interesting and be one to monitor because they've got, 4 other guys, so to speak, and, that I think they're confident in, and really 5. But one of them is a true freshman in A.K. Deer who, being on the road in Tallahassee, I expect it to be raucous. I expect it to be loud. And so, I'm not sure they would trust a true freshman. And then Kevin Riley is another redshirt freshman who has got some quickness, some speed. But I think they're going to really it's going to be a 3-man rotation, I think, in this road game. And I think it's going to be Daniel Hill, who's really a redshirt freshman in his own right, but had a really good spring. He's a load. He's, over 6 feet tall, 240 pounds, really good receiver out of the backfield. Has got some power. I heard he had a really good week this past week. And then a guy I know you follow recruiting very well, especially in the Sunshine State, a guy that Florida State will be very familiar with, Richard Young, who, of course, was came out of the state of Florida a couple of years ago. He's had a slow start to his career and had to wait his turn. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if he started the game, even though, again, I've heard a lot of good stuff about Daniel Hill. But 1A and 1B will be Daniel Hill and Richard Young. Richard has some ability to take it the distance, and he should know the protections really well, for this offense since he played in it a year ago. He showed some explosiveness a year ago, but just got a little nicked up. But I think he's had a good offseason. So, again, Daniel Hill, Richard Young, and then a guy, and it's probably a good thing because Kalen DeBoer wanted a third down back, wanted a guy that could provide experience, depth. They went and got Dre Washington from the University of Louisiana. He's a senior. He's got kickoff return ability. He's got ability to take the ball, 70 to 80 yards. He's got speed. He'll be the third back, I think, that they're going to prepare. And I know he made a good impression on him when fall camp started. So while it's a blow to lose your starting running back, because I think Jam had separated himself, they do have some depth. And I think the one thing that's to their advantage is they lost Jam almost 2 weeks ago, but they've had a chance to get a lot of practice reps in, decide who is ready to play, and then have them ready to go against Florida State. So I do think the injuries, while they're significant to Jaden Roberts and to Jam Miller, I think they are both manageable for Alabama to win this opener against Florida State. But I will say the one area of the team that I'm worried about is the kicking game. And, that can make the difference if this game stays close. Alabama's had some issues with punting. Blake Dowd is, taking the place of James Burnip. He's been okay. I mean, I was told this past week was better, where he averaged about 40 yards a punt. But in the spring, it was dicey, and I've heard it was dicey in the scrimmages. So we'll see. And then Connor Talty, the kicker, he's taking Graham Nicholson's spot, and he was signed kind of to replace Will Reichert, but he wasn't ready last year. I thought he had a solid spring overall, but I think he's been inconsistent in fall camp. I think he had a better week last week. But again, if there is a dicey area for Alabama heading into this opener with Florida State, I would just tell you that I'm more concerned about the kicking game than I am, the Jam Miller and Jaden Roberts injuries, because I think Alabama has enough depth there to manage them.
Florida State also replacing the guy that finished second in the Lou Grozo Award and second in the Ray Guy. So we could get and if the weather holds for what it's supposed to be, we could get an absolute crap show on special teams both ways. They are replacing the kicker with the number 1 overall kicker the year that he came out, Jake Weinberg. Little less confidence in the punter, but I think they feel fairly confident there. College football fans, if you haven't geared up for the season, which is just days away, make sure you're doing so at Alumni Hall. You can visit their locations there in Tuscaloosa. You can visit them online at alumnihall.com. And right now, we will get you a little bit of a savings. CFA 15 will save you 15% on your order. Crimson Tide fans, whoever you cheer for, you can check out alumnihall.com to get your order today. You mentioned the Roberts injury. Obviously, Miller, we talked about too. When you think about Bama historically, obviously, in their last 20-year dynasty, you think about how good their trench play is. And I have talked to several people around Alabama, outside of Alabama, people that cover the SEC. So much has been made about their defensive line and how really they are so deep there and really good on that side. Talk to me about, with the Roberts injury kind of considered, talk to me about what your thoughts are on Alabama being able to run block, pass block, all of the things. But on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, we just watched that Iowa State, Kansas State, where Iowa State was getting 3, 4, 5 yards of push up front, and that's why I think they ended up beating Kansas State over the weekend. But are you expecting Alabama's offensive line to kind of have their way in this matchup, or are there concerns there because of the injuries, or what were your thoughts on that unit?
I think they're confident in the O-line, even with Vandermark in the starting lineup. That's what I've been hearing from people that have spoken to the staff. Ryan Grubb, who, don't forget, has an offensive line background, even though he's going to be the play caller, be the OC, be up in the box. I think they feel good about where they are there. But from what I understand, they've put a premium in this fall camp on physicality, being more physical than they were a year ago. And they want to be an offensive line that can get movement in the trenches and can provide balance. But don't get it twisted. I mean, the guy on offense, of course, everyone's going to be looking at Ty Simpson, because this will be his first start of his career. And as you've studied it, he's only played snaps that counted once. And that was 2 years ago in Tampa in an ugly game against South Florida, a 10-3 win. He came off the bench and he played pretty well, but he's never started. And yet, I will say this. I was asked this weekend. We talked about it on Talking Ball this morning. What do you expect Kalen DeBoer, the approach to be with Ty Simpson? Do I expect Alabama to come out and run the football? Well, I think they want to establish the line of scrimmage, but I expect them to be aggressive, and I expect them to put the game in the quarterback's hands. I still think even though Ty has got some inexperience, they're going to let him throw the football. They trust him. He's had a really good offseason, and I think they're very, very confident in their wide receivers, especially the top three that's been talked about ad nauseum: Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and then, of course, the transfer from Miami that you're very familiar with, Isaiah Horton, who's really been a big play guy, a vertical guy that's been hooking up with Ty Simpson quite a bit. And so I think they're confident in those guys. The interesting part's going to be kind of who the other ones are that play. Rico Scott is really a redshirt freshman who's a kid that I think they're confident in, who they think has a lot of speed that can really help from the state of Pennsylvania, that they think can make some plays. And then, of course, they've got Cole Adams, who spent part of the year hurt last year. He'll probably be your punt returner, he and Ryan Williams. But he had some drops in the second scrimmage, but he's a guy they like in the slot. They think he can make some plays. And then, we'll see who that sixth guy is. It could be Jalen Mbakwe, who's someone, that I think is made the move from defense that's getting better. Or it could be a Jalen Hale. He's kind of a wild card. He got hurt last year in the preseason in fall camp and never played, but he's another one that can really play. But I think they're confident, though, and especially in that top three, and we'll see, how the other guys play out. And I think at tight end, that's been an interesting position because it's been banged up in fall camp. Josh Cuevas will ideally get the start and be healthy enough to go. He's a transfer from Washington who made some plays a year ago, who I think they're expecting a big year out of. Danny Lewis is a kid from Shreveport, Louisiana, who almost went in the portal, or did go in the portal for about a day, then came back, missed the spring with an injury. He's more of a number 2 tight end. He can catch the football, but they like him as a blocker. And I wouldn't be surprised with their emphasis on developing physicality. And from what I understand, Kalen DeBoer, when he was at Washington, he did this quite a bit. They like playing multiple tight ends, especially with the edge running game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they play multiple tight ends quite a bit to kind of try to get Tony White's defense to declare a little bit. But again, I know Tony likes to disguise things. He's a 3-3-5 guy, likes to do some 4-man front. But it'll be an interesting chess match between the two coaching staffs. But I think Alabama overall is very confident in their offense going in, even with injuries to Jam Miller and Jaden Roberts. I think they feel like they have the answers there. But I know you also asked about the defensive line. That was my other area of concern, only because I'm not the biggest Freddie Roach advocate, who's the defensive line coach. But there is no reason they shouldn't be good. James Smith has missed much of fall camp with a little bit of an ankle, but I think he's going to be good to go. Kalen DeBoer thinks he's going to have a chance to break out and be a high draft pick. He certainly played well in the ReliaQuest Bowl, even though that wasn't an overall memorable day for Alabama. Tim Keenan is a team captain who has played a ton of football in the interior, the other, nose and defensive tackle. And then LT Overton, very well known to your listeners and your viewers, who should be maybe slated for a big senior year. And then they've got depth behind them. They've got Jordan Renaud. They got Jeremiah Beeman. They've got some guys, Keon Keeley, who's another 5-star that has kind of been waiting his turn. Alabama's got some depth on the defensive line that they can use. And so I think there'll be probably at least a 6-man rotation there. And then you've got a very experienced linebacker room, with Deontay Lawson, who from what I understand is now taking his knee brace off. He feels really good. Justin Jefferson is back for his, super senior season. They're the 2 main inside guys. And then they got Colorado's leading tackler is kind of the rotational guy in there, Mekhi, Hill Green, who's going to be the other inside backer. And then Quay Russaw. I know we've talked about a lot of names, but if you want to talk about somebody that could be ready to break out, he and James Smith were high school teammates at Carver Montgomery, and Quay Russaw might be the biggest freak on this football team. And I'm going to be really interested to see what Kane Womack does with him and how he moves him around to maybe get him matched up against that FSU offense.
On that offense, a lot has been made about, and I think it's a little overblown, but I do want to get your take. As somebody who painfully had to watch Gus Malzahn for years and years and years against this Alabama program, and the way that he was able to scheme stuff up, I think some of that's overblown because of the difference in regime change. Do you still have kind of nightmares about Malzahn being able to scheme things up, or do you think that the changes in a DeBoer-style defense make that, I don't want to say irrelevant, because Gus has certainly done it at a high level, and if you can do it against Nick, then you can do it against other people too. But is that maybe overblown, or are there some concerns there, or just what is the thought of maybe the Gus Castellanos mixture against this Bama defense?
Well, I mean, certainly you have to be concerned with the misdirections and the quarterback runs, because when Gus has been at his best, his quarterback has been a good runner. I don't know what happened at Auburn when he decided to go the Jarrett Stidham route, and even Bo Nix, and Bo was a really good player, but I just felt like what Gus got away from at Auburn was when he got away from Cam Newton and Nick Marshall, he got away from what made him great, and that was and hard to defend was the ability to run the quarterback quite a bit, and I thought it made him a little bit more predictable in some ways. And so it's going to be interesting because Castellanos seems to be a guy, he had him at UCF even though he transferred. So he almost seems to be getting back to his roots. But we'll see. He does love to run the football, and especially the zone stuff. So Alabama's defensive line is going to have to win the battle up front and win the battle against a kind of a revamped Florida State, offensive line. But I'm not that worried, though, from one standpoint. I know it's not Nick Saban, and I understand it's a different coaching staff, but I don't think Gus is going to be able to reinvent himself. It's about dudes, and I wonder if Florida State has enough yet. I think they're going to be better. I certainly don't expect them to be the train wreck they were last year. I think they're going to be a 7-5 football team, something like that. I think this is going to be a good football game for a half. I think Alabama will take control in the third quarter into the fourth. I've got Alabama covering 34-17, but I have respect for Gus Malzahn. I mean, he's been around a long time. I have respect for Tony White. He did good work at Syracuse. He did some good things at Nebraska. But I think Alabama's had a really good offseason. I think they have the better roster, and I think right now they have the better coaching staff. Now, Florida State's has not really meshed. They have so many new parts, so many new coaches, so many new players that I think the best football for Florida State won't be till later in the season. I think they're going to have to get used to one another. But certainly, I think Alabama is the definitive favorite here. And I really like Ty Simpson. I like his talent. I always have. I thought he was going to be ready 2 years ago. He wasn't. But I think he's had the marriage right now between head coach and quarterback, and then Ryan Grubb coming back, I think is a really good one. And I think Alabama's at an advantage here. Now, the reason, though, that I think this is going to be a fight is, again, this is in Doak Campbell Stadium. This is a loud, boisterous, hard place to play. So Alabama has to come out ready. They also have some questions in the kicking game. So you mentioned some weather. So, there's some things that could happen early. Who knows? I don't think Norvell has anything to lose from this perspective of letting it rip. So they could come out with a trick play or two, maybe an onside kick. So Alabama has to be ready. And yet here's the thing. We've been talking, and previewing this game, and I don't think we've even touched on what I think is Alabama's biggest advantage in this thing, and they're the deepest position on their football team. And that's what I'm talking about is their secondary. I think the secondary matches up well with Florida State. I know Florida State has some new receivers, some guys they really like, but this secondary of Alabama's is experienced, and yet they've got a freakazoid talent in Dijon Lee, who right before we came on here to this morning, Kalen DeBoer said, we certainly don't have a problem playing him in this game. He's like a co-starter with Zabian Brown, and I know y'all have talked about Zabian. He was a freshman All-American last year. Damani Jackson is another guy that's returned that's very experienced at corner. But Dijon is so good that he's going to force himself on the field. And then they've got two good safeties and who are now, in Bray Hubbard and then Keon Sabb, who's healthy, which I think is big. And then, you've got an experienced nickel who is very familiar to Florida State and should be to Norvell, and Deshaun Jones, who played at Wake Forest for the majority of his career before coming to Alabama. But I think Alabama's very experienced in the back end, which is going to help them in this raucous environment. I think they can, if they get pressure on Castellanos. And my biggest thing is he's probably going to be tough to get on the ground. because he's very mobile, but you have to move him off his spot. To me, you have to, when he does take off, you've got to make him feel you. And then you have to make him make throws into tight windows and then win the turnover battle. And to me, Florida State, the only way they got a shot to win this thing in the fourth quarter is if Alabama is sloppy with the ball, has some mistakes in the kicking game, turns it over. But if Alabama turns over FSU and if they win the turnover battle, then I think Alabama can win and win reasonably comfortably. But again, I have enough respect for Florida State to believe that Norvell's team will acquit itself well. I'm just not sure they'll get the W.
Yeah, what's kind of crazy, I agree with you spot on all of this, right? Like, so even coming from the FSU perspective, I've been asked, like, what's the path to a win? And it is. It's Simpson making a couple of mistakes or one of those younger running backs putting the ball on the ground in a wet, sloppy game. And Florida State taking care of the ball. They were one of the worst in FBS last year at turnover margin. They had 6 takeaways last year, Drew. They were awful at forcing the other team to make mistakes. And I do think White will be more aggressive. I think if you're looking at the ultra positive mindset as a Florida State fan or supporter or whatever, you're hoping that Simpson gives you a free one, right? And in either to take points off the board for Bama or to give you points, right? Turn the ball over inside of your own 30 or something like that, or one of those running backs putting the ball on the ground. But yeah, if Florida State wins the turnover battle by 2, if Florida State's able to, I don't think they're going to be able to pass the ball, with any consistency because of how good Bama secondary is. Not that this is much easier, but if they can run the ball somewhat effectively, whether that be a mix of Castellanos and the running backs, whatever, those are your paths to keeping this thing close in the fourth quarter. If you can keep it close in the fourth quarter, college football is a stupid game and stupid things happen, right? That's how you pull an upset. If you conversely can't run the ball, if you can't pass the ball, if you do lose the turnover margin, if Simpson's not giving you a couple of freebies, it's tough to imagine. You talked about it. Like, Bama just has dudes. I look at the starters for both teams, and I wonder how many guys would start from Florida State's top 22 on Bama's, and it's a limited number. It might be a couple, right? If we're really being generous, you might convince yourself of 3, right? Well, even if you're being the most generous, you say 3 out of 22 is not very good, right? Like when you're talking about it. And so, yeah, I mean, but you'd look at a lot of rosters across college football and say that, right? Like you'd look at a lot of rosters and say, like, how many of their guys would truly go start at Bama right now? And it's not a ton, right? All over the country. So that's not even a slight at Florida State. They'll be favored in a lot of games this year. I do think they rebound. I think they get to 6, 7, 8 wins potentially. I just don't know that this is one of them. So it might be the homer in me talking. I'm convincing myself of a 30-21 game just to say that we took the moral victory of covering the spread. But I'm pretty in line with you. I don't know that this is super competitive late. I'd love to believe it was. I'd love if every game this weekend was a 3-point game and we just got excellent college football. But siding with Bama here is kind of the easy move. And hopefully, for the FSU folks that tune in, I'm wrong about it. Hopefully for my mental health, I'm wrong about it, but I just don't think that I am. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But I just think the key is, Simpson, can he take care of the football? And he hasn't had a turnover in fall camp. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to struggle in Tallahassee, but it does give the coaching staff confidence. And of course, and then to have the running game provide some balance. I don't know if it needs to be dominant, but I do think Daniel Hill needs to make some plays. Richard Young maybe pop one. I think that would help, no question about it. And then I think just overall execution. I think the wide receivers I think they'll need, to make. Now, I do think it'll be a controlled passing game. I think that, a lot of it will be getting the ball out in space and then, seeing if Florida State can tackle, because I think Alabama does have guys that can run after the catch. And then, and then defensively for Alabama, it goes back to creating turnovers because that's Kane Womack's total, that's his philosophy. And then I think they need to contain the running game. I don't know that they'll completely stop it. I have respect for Castellanos. He's a tough competitor. He's similar to Diego Pavia. Now, I will say this. I'm going to be really interested to see the fabric of this program because no disrespect to Castellanos, but if this had been Nick Saban's program with the way he talked this off, I don't think he would have talked like this.
I agree with that.
Because he would be a dead man. But we'll see. I mean, I want to see how Alabama, they've been kind of coy, Deontay Lawson and some of the other defensive leaders, when they've been asked about Castellanos. But we'll see how they defend him. But again, they've got to contain the running game, create turnovers. And then I just think don't give Florida State big plays, because in the past with Gus Malzahn and a lot of the RPOs, you would give up a chunk play either via the run, quarterback run, because you didn't, you got out of your gap, or you'd give up a vertical play because Gus likes to throw the deep ball.
Yeah. Squirrel had a good game 2 years ago against Bama.
So you don't need to give up the deep ball and allow Florida State to get a quick score like that. You've got to make them earn everything, and have to rely on their kicking game that, as you mentioned, has a little bit of inexperience. But I think if Alabama can do those 5 or 6 things and do them well enough, I think they can be a double-digit winner here. But the bottom line is survive and advance, and we'll see how Alabama reacts to a road game. But I'll be honest, they played their best football on the road in many cases last year. So I know they didn't play well at Oklahoma, but they did play well at LSU. They played well at Wisconsin. And I think, I think Kalen DeBoer and his staff, I think they've put a renewed emphasis on, playing well on the road and putting an even bigger focus on it. But for the most part, I thought they played pretty well on the road last year. They played well enough to win at Vanderbilt. They just didn't. Defensively, they had their worst game of the season. But again, it is what it is. They did lose against Oklahoma, and they did. And they did struggle, at times to finish games like at home against Georgia. But I'll be honest with you, I'm ready to throw the whole season out last year because it was such a transition from Nick Saban. Yeah. I think you'll get a much truer look at how Kalen DeBoer's teams are going to play this year, and I'm fascinated to see it. And I really think they played well on the road for the most part last year. And I think they're going to play well on the road in Tallahassee on Saturday afternoon.
Something both fan bases can agree on is throwing out 2024 and moving on to 2025 for different reasons, but both can agree. Listen, I know you'll talk about this game every day from now until Saturday. Where can people follow you? Where can they hear you? Where can they find what you got going on, Drew?
Yeah, they can follow me at Drew D977 ESPN on X. Our station is at 977 ESPN. Our SoundCloud account is 97.7 The Zone if you want to go back and listen to any of our content. And then we're at 977ESPN.com. And we always enjoy being on with you in College Football Addiction. It's always great. It's great. It's a great time of year. We got, a little bit of an appetizer this past, Saturday. But I'm going to tell you something. TJ, I know you guys are going to be talking about it on your channel all week. But I don't know if I ever remember a first full week with as many big-time matchups as we've got coming up on Saturday. I mean, Alabama, Florida State's not even considered it's considered an appetizer in a lot of ways, which most years it would not be. But I'll be honest, we were kind of joking about this on Talking Ball this morning. I affectionately refer to Notre Dame as 1988 because that's the last time they ever won anything. And they're playing Miami, and we've barely even talked about it. I mean, we're more concerned with Arch Manning, playing in the shoe and then LSU Clemson. But, we haven't even really focused on some of these other matchups that I think are really high level and really good.
Yeah, Baylor Auburn on Friday night, Colorado Georgia Tech.
Talking about that one. That's under the radar too. But
bro, even the Sunday stuff. You mentioned Miami, Notre Dame. Yeah, South Carolina, Virginia Tech. I mean, Brent Pryce on the hot seat. There is I think the Syracuse Tennessee one is intriguing, but also I'm not super high on Syracuse this year. But yeah, you're right. From Thursday to USF plays right down the road for me. 20 minutes. USF plays Boise State. I love Alex Golish there at USF. I know Bama fans are maybe scarred from that rain game there a couple of years ago, but yeah, this weekend is if last week was a little calamari. This week is like a 64-ounce ribeye. There's no doubt that this is a main course for us that we're getting, man.
Nah, no doubt. And even on Monday, Belichick's opener against Dykes. So
yeah, should be fun, man. Well, I appreciate you a ton for stopping by again. 977 ESPN in Huntsville, and then all the places that he mentioned. We'll link them in the description. We'll get you back on through the year, man. I appreciate you being gracious and making some time for us.
Always love it, man. Thank you.